And we are live. I'm Shae Russell for mining.com.au, and today we are bringing you a special webinar live from a location in Launceston. Mark Cooksey, the Managing Director for ABx Group. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Shae. Great to be with you again.
Now, for everybody listening, we have a very exciting webinar ahead of ourselves today. Normally, when Mark addresses the market, he likes to talk about one of the products that he's working on. But today, you're in for a treat. We're going to be talking about the bauxite and rare earths projects that ABx are working on. Now, we are also streaming this live on YouTube and LinkedIn, and we'll be having an active Q&A session at the end of today's webinar, or after Mark's finished presenting. So while Mark's talking, start dropping your questions in either the YouTube chat or the LinkedIn chat. We will see them and I will address them to Mark at the end of today. Mark, I'm absolutely enthralled about, I'm really excited to learn about today. We've been talking a lot about what's happening with bauxite and rare earths. So please, I'm going to hand the reins over to you. Take us through it.
Great, thank you, Shae. So welcome everyone, and as Shae said, normally I like to talk about one topic at a time, and this webinar was intended to be about rare earths, but then we got such good news and progress on our bauxite that we're going to cover both, but I'll talk about the rare earths first. So just quickly, ABx does have three parts to its business: the rare earths, which I'll cover first, the Alcor, which is our clean fluorine chemicals process that we're developing. I'm not going to cover that at all today. And then finally, the bauxite, which I will cover at the end. So what we're talking about here with the rare earths is we, in the last few months, we've taken a bulk sample from our Deep Leads resource in northern Tasmania, and we've sent that to ANSTO in Sydney, and they are producing a mixed rare earth carbonate sample. It's called an MREC, and that's the ideal product from a clay deposit that is then sold to a separation plant to produce separated rare earth oxide. So on the slide here is just some pictures of the trial pit being dug and just a map showing where the three trial pits are and all the exploration drilling we've been doing in northern Tasmania. We've disclosed that to the market before. Now, I just cannot emphasize this enough. I feel like I do this in every public communication about how ionic adsorption clay rare earths are processed. And really, when we think about any commodity, what's important is how much does it cost to get it out of the ground, and what is the value of the product? And for a clay resource, the first thing is, like any commodity, what's the resource? So how big is the resource? What grade is it? And particularly of these four permanent magnet rare earths, NdPr and DyTb, that, those factors clearly affect the production cost, specifically the grade. Then you have leaching and precipitation, and that's the processing steps for how you get the rare earths from what's in the clay into a mixed rare earth carbonate. And the key factor here is how much of those magnetic rare earths do you get out? And something that I really encourage anyone to look for, if you're looking at reporting on different deposits, is when someone's reporting extraction, which what we do as well. When someone says, "Oh, we get 60% recovery or something of rare earths," what really matters is that the whole process step? Is that getting from the ore to the MREC product? Getting a little bit of just reporting it for part of the process is only an incomplete picture. And then finally, it's how much is your product worth? And the dominant factors here are what is your proportion of those four magnetic rare earths, NdPr, DyTb, and particularly the DyTb, because they're worth 3 to 10 times as much as the NdPr. And also, how many impurities do you have? That's aluminium and iron and stuff like that. So we think we've got a really good story to tell about that whole process. And the most recent results we reported is some more interim results on the way to producing an MREC. This is just the key numbers, the magnetic rare earths, they're listed, the four listed there. And what it's showing is that in the sample, which was dug out of the ground, the important thing there is that the terbium is 0.7% and the dysprosium is 4.3%. That's a percentage of the total amount of rare earths. Those numbers are really high, basically the highest we've seen anywhere, I think, from any clay resource around the world. And then the last two columns are the extraction. How much of that do we get out when we do this really simple processing? And so ANSTO's done tests, we call them diagnostic tests. It's only a little amount of solid, so 4 weight percent solids, and you get over 70% extraction of those 4 magnetic rare earths, which is really high. And then the last test we announced is when they do a higher amount of solids. It's a bigger mass, so 300 grams of solid, 25% solids, and the extractions are still high, and they come down a little bit, just below 60, but that's very typical and still a high number. So what ABx has that's relatively unique is a large amount of dysprosium and terbium in the resource, and then very high extraction under very simple conditions. And when I say simple, I mean low cost. It's basically salt water, room temperature and pressure. This test was done in 30 minutes, but even in 5 minutes, you get this level of extraction. So that all leads to potentially a very low cost process. So next steps, I'll show here that there's 5 steps to producing the MREC. We've done and reported the first 3. So that was, first of all, tests in our own lab. Yes, good extractions. Second of all, tests in ANSTO. Yes, good extractions. Third, tests in ANSTO again, larger amount of material, good extractions. The next step is impurity removal tests, where it's another interim step that ANSTO does that helps get rid of any aluminium and iron and other impurities in the product. And then the final one is producing the MREC. And so that impurity removal test, we should get the results any day, really, from ANSTO, we're hoping. So I'd expect to be able to announce that within a couple of weeks. And then the MREC sample itself should be, will definitely be produced in Q4, possibly even November. So we think that MREC, 2 things are important about it. One, it should be fantastic in terms of it'll have a high dysprosium and terbium content and low impurities. And 2, it was produced using these conditions that are very amenable to low cost processing. Room temperature and pressure, ammonium sulfate with basically no acid, 5 minutes or 30 minutes, very, very quick time. We've got customers really chasing us, looking for, either what is the composition of that MREC product, or ideally, can you send us a sample? This sample is only going to be about 100 grams, but you only need customer says, just give us 5 grams. That's enough for us to check out. I was talking to a potential customer just last week who said, we're trying to build separation plant and metal making plant. Our biggest worry is feedstock, and it's all about the heavies, which means dysprosium and terbium. Where are we going to get those heavy rare earths from? And so they're very keen to see our results. Okay, so that's the rare earth story. Then on bauxite, to say some other good news to present from recent times. These transactions that we've announced recently are to do with our Queensland and New South Wales projects. So on the left, show the map of Queensland, where we've got our Binjor, our Sunrise bauxite project, like the mine located at Binjor. It's about 200 kilometres southwest by road from Bundaberg Port, and the project is mine at Binjor, ship the bauxite by truck to Bundaberg, and then export. In New South Wales, we've got the partnerships about 2 projects. One is the Teralga bauxite project near Goulburn, so it's a resource, and there's also the smaller Penrose bauxite project. It's not that far away towards the coast. It's not a resource yet, but it looks like a sort of potentially high-grade bauxite deposit that could be useful for refractory grade bauxite. And again, the concept is we would ship by truck or maybe rail to Port Kembla and export from there. And just at the bottom, there's the resource details for those resources. So we've had these for a while, and they're prospective projects. We didn't really have the capital turn them into production. So we've been looking for a partner to do that. And that's what we've signed just recently. We signed a series of agreements with a company called Good Importing International, or GII. So they're a private Australian company. They're a commodities trader. They're invested in other ASX bulk commodity companies. And sort of the key bit is the agreement is they will invest $5.4 million into the Queensland project, and that's in 2 stages. And for that, they will get 75% of the project. And then for the New South Wales projects, they've got an exclusive option for 9 months to make a similar type of investment. In this case, it's $4.8 million, again, to acquire 70% of the project. And the idea is then that those funds are used to develop those projects. So ABx itself never has to fund the development of those projects any further, but ABx retains a 25% share of the project, so we get a share of the upside and the potential profits, or the likely profits in the future. If we drill down into the Queensland one, that's the table at the bottom, just to explain the details. So the first investment will be $2.7 million. The only condition waiting for that investment to be made is we're checking out with the ASX whether the ASX says that we need shareholder approval to enter these transactions. So if the ASX says, no, we don't need shareholder approval, that investment will be made immediately. If we do need shareholder approval, then we have to have an EGM and the investment will be made immediately afterwards. Those funds will be used to secure regulatory approvals, land access agreements and permits for an interim form of production. It's basically an interim environmental approval that has some constraints, a key one being that the total mining is limited to effectively about 800,000 tonnes. Those funds will be also used to finalise the mine plan, the infrastructure design, and that should take 12 to 24 months. The reason that there's a bit of uncertainty there is there's one aspect of the approval process that could be as short as 12 months or as long as 24 months. We just don't know yet, so we're just being conservative on that. Once those milestones are achieved, and we've got confirmation, we've got the interim environmental approval, we've got a mine plan that we're all happy with, then GI will make the second $2.7 million investment, and that'll actually be then to create the project. And that only takes about 3 months because it's not much infrastructure required and we've done all the design work up to that point. So we just think this is a fantastic outcome for ABx. They're decent bauxite resources. The global bauxite price increased by 50% in the last year. It spiked 50%. It's since mostly come back down. There's global supply concerns about where's bauxite going to come from, particularly as Guinea, which is a huge exporter to China, is flexing its political muscle and actually stopping some companies from exporting. So there's a real opportunity for a project like ours to tap into that uncertainty and worry about security of supply, and to do it in a way that doesn't require further capital from ABx, but ABx continues to share an upside of the project is fantastic. And we can continue to focus on our rare earth and alcohol fluorine projects, which are great futures for the company. So thank you, Shae, and I'm happy to take any questions from the audience.
Short and sweet, Mark, and to the point. Loved it. Listen, thank you very much for that update. Just for everybody who is watching, don't forget you can submit your questions on YouTube, where we're live streaming it, as well as LinkedIn. And I've already got some coming in. Mark, kicking off with one of my own. You see that the Deep Leads project looks good. This is your rare earth project. Listen, I know a lot of companies like to say that about their projects. So what makes this Deep Leads rare earth project stand out amongst its peers?
Yeah, so it's really the combination. The things that are important, like I said, are the grade of your resource, the size of your resource to some extent, the metallurgy, which is how easy is it to extract and how costly is it to extract the rare earths, and what does your product look like? And you need all of those, and we have all of them. So again, I encourage people. I mean, it's hard, right? There is some complexity, but when you look at various projects out there really interrogate what's being presented to Shae to check that they're covering all those aspects. I mean, the real metric's going to be who signs up with customers. So when we talk to customers, they're very interested in our project, but of course, we don't have a binding offtake agreement or investment yet. So that's what I would encourage investors to look for. Who are the ones that, we think we will get there, but that's really going to be the key of showing which projects are really prospective and which are, more speculative.
You refer in your presentation about how simple the rare earths deposit is and the simple chemical processing. Why is that? What makes that so simple, and exactly what makes this a benefit to ABx?
Yeah, so the key bit is that in our resource, the rare earth elements are just attached to the clay particles. So rather than being embedded in a mineral which has to be chemically attacked, with acid or temperature or something, all we need to do is basically put it in salt water, and basically the rare earth ion jumps off the clay and into a solution. And the reason that's, well, one, that's low cost because you don't need acid or temperature. The other is it's low risk because it's already done. It's already done in China. And so what ABx needs to do is go, right, that chemistry works in China. Their practices are not acceptable largely in the West, environmentally or other things. So we have to do it in a way that meets regulations here. But that is far easier than saying, oh, we have a clay resource where that doesn't work and we need to invent some new process. So we don't need to invent a process. We just need to translate what is already done elsewhere in the world to do it appropriately in Australia.
So I'm about to get caught out for not knowing my chemistry names. So I resent this next question immensely. Now, this is what I've heard that magnet manufacturers are trying to stop using. I know dysprosium, and is it terbium?
Terbium, yeah.
Terbium, I got it, thank God. I've heard that they're trying to stop using those. Now, obviously, these are two of the main rare earths that you are talking about benefiting from in your Deep Leads project. Have you, A, heard about this, and B, what does that mean for ABx and this particular project?
Yeah, so it's common in the world, right? If a feed material is expensive, then people will try and look for alternatives. And so the reason dysprosium and terbium are expensive is because they're very effective. So what they do is in a permanent magnet, which is a really strong magnetic strength, they allow that magnetic strength to be retained at high temperatures. So in a really like a huge electric motor. So they're really valuable, and there's not much of it around. So companies are trying to go, well, is there a way of getting rid of it? So not using it. What it looks like to us is that magnet makers are succeeding in using less of it. So maybe instead of needing, 7% dysprosium in their magnet, they can get it down to 5%. But there's no indication they can get to zero at all. And so given that the number of magnets being used is going up so much, even if the percentage of dysprosium is reduced a little bit, the net demand is still going up a lot. And the second thing is, our deposit still has a lot of NdMpR. So we're not totally, for us, the Dy and Tb is like the cream. It's extra value today. And if the market did change a bit, we're not totally dependent on it.
Okay, so for everybody watching, we are starting to see more of your questions come through, so please drop them in. We've got time for about another 10 minutes of questions. This one, we're going to stick with rare earths for just the moment. This one's coming from Craig. Will the rare earth saltwater leaching process happen on site or at another site? Great question.
Yeah, so but basically it has to happen on site because if you dig up, say, 1,000 tons of ore, there's only 1 ton, roughly, of rare earths in that. So you don't want to move 1,000 tons somewhere to do the processing. You want to do that on site so that you only need to move 1 ton. So we are currently, both ourselves and using external experts, assessing the different options for how that extraction will happen using the salt water. So, for simply, it could be in a tank, a stirred tank. It could be in a heap, like a heap leach, like a lot of copper's done,
Mhm.
or even potentially in situ, where you actually put the the salt water into the ground to do the leaching. Now, there's pros and cons for all of them, but it'll be on site.
We have got a question. Oh, we've got another question. We'll just stick with rare earths at the moment before we go to bauxite. Thank you very much, Terence. This one: do you envision a pilot plant for deep leads, or straight to a feasibility study?
I think it's probably iterative. So we're doing metallurgical work already. That's a good question. I think it's in parallel, basically in parallel. So there will be piloting involved, and that almost certainly that will be done. Well, some of it at ANSTO. Then I think you would actually ideally move to our site. And the economic studies, like a scoping study and a feasibility study, will be done in parallel with the results from those pilot studies being fed into the economic studies.
I've got a question for me, actually, before any of the other questions. I get to some of the other questions on bauxite. I think in past presentations, I've seen you talk about how you're essentially creating a rare earth, or not so much compound, but a powder that comprises several of these metals rather than specializing into, creating a dedicated dysprosium one. Is that what your customers want? Do they want to do like the extra scientific steps at their end? Is that what, because obviously you're engaging a lot with your customers. Are they after sort of just a general all-purpose oxide or compound, sorry, I should say, and then they can take it to the next steps that they need to do?
Well, it's sort of, I mean, in technically speaking, the first step that has to be done is basically get the rare earth away from everything else. And the second step is separate out each of the rare earths from each other. As to how you do that, do you do that within one company or multiple companies? Well, that's really a commercial consideration. So Linus, for example, does the whole thing. So they do all, it's a different process, but it's a whole beneficiation and leaching to separate everything else away from the rare earths. And then they have their own separation plant to separate it into each of them. For us, we're saying commercially, better to minimize risk by sort of starting with only what we need to do, which is on site, extract the rare earths, separate it from everything else. Then we have that mixed rare earth carbonate, which there are customers that want it. So it's a lower risk option for us and a quicker option to say, well, we could sell that to them. In the longer term, we may say, actually, it's commercially better to do the separation ourselves. And we could then build a separation plant, say in Tasmania, even in Bell Bay, which is where our Alcor facility is. It's less than 100 kilometres away. I think that answers the question. Yep.
It certainly does. And it was a very incoherent question for me as well. So I really appreciate the very straightforward answer, Mark. All right. I have a question on your bauxite project. Just for everybody listening, we've probably got about 5 minutes left of Q&A. So drop your questions in the chats for wherever you're watching this. Okay. So what are ABx's long-term goals for its bauxite project? And how do these projects fit into the broader global bauxite market?
So our long-term goal is for them to be in profitable production. Basically, that's simple. Although we started the Alcor and rare earth projects, we could have stopped the bauxite work, but we thought no, these are still compelling projects on a global scale. Let's pursue them, and that's being vindicated now by getting the strategic investment. Where they fit in globally, I mean, they are small or moderate size, but interesting. Bauxite's a big market, and most of the bauxite's already locked up. So, for example, Rio Tinto already mines a huge amount of bauxite from far north Queensland, but it basically goes through their refineries and smelters. And the other big companies like Alcoa have the same thing. Or their bauxite's in countries that are maybe less politically stable, like Guinea, etc. So there's more and more refineries that require bauxite that are going, where do we get it from? And so our opportunity is to provide a sufficient source of bauxite that can be part of the supply for a particular refinery. And it's very reliable supply. They go, well, this is coming from Australia. We know we're going to get it. We know it's going to be good quality, and that gives that refinery a bit of security of supply and also leverage in their negotiations with other potential bauxite suppliers.
Just on that, with regard to your partnering with the Good Importing International, why did you choose them?
Yeah, so we were, looking for a partner that would basically provide the investment for the projects and that we thought would be a good long-term partner. We talked to many potential parties over recent years, and particularly in the last 12 months when the bauxite price spiked. Good Importing were just very, it was a very quick negotiation. It still took months, but that's quick in these situations. Any issues that came up, we resolved very quickly and constructively, and so that built a lot of confidence on both sides that we could work together in the long term. And the deal's a good one, to say, for us to be able to get these projects into production with effectively not having to provide investment ourselves, but still retaining a significant share of the upside. That's a good deal for ABx, and that's why we did it.
You sort of answered what was the next question I was going to ask, which was, by partnering with GII, does this de-risk the project? So I might just skip over that because you have just asked that one, unless you've got more you want to add to that.
No, I think I've already covered it. Yep.
We're probably down to time for our last two questions. One of them is, here we go. Could there be more bauxite around the Binjor resource? Are you going to do additional exploration here?
Yeah, we definitely think there could be. We'd done enough exploration back in the before 2020 to go. Look, we've got a 37 million ton resource. That's good enough to get interest. Now that we do have GII as a partner, we haven't discussed it. Well, not discussed it formally or decided yet, but I think there's a good chance we would do more exploration over the next few years to see. We expect more bauxite to be there, but we need to do the exploration to confirm it.
And final question might actually just be a reflection of my introduction. You are in Launceston, at a facility in Launceston. What is it, and why does it matter to ABx?
Yeah, should have talked about it myself before as well. So
I stuffed that one up, didn't I?
we've rented this, it's basically a little warehouse for many years. It's where we've stored all our drill samples from Tasmania and a little bit from Queensland. So we've been exploring for bauxite here for 15 years, and we mined bauxite south of Launceston back from 2014 to 2020. So we've got all those samples here. Now we've got the rare earth drill samples here as well. And now what we also use it for metallurgical testing. So, for example, when we were mining bauxite, we do our grade control here, which is where you're constantly checking the composition of what you're mining to make sure you can provide product on spec to customers. And for example, the in-house metallurgical tests we reported on the rare earths, they were done here. In fact, Daniel's sort of walking past behind me. You might have seen him. It's a well set up facility. It's 3 minutes from Launceston Airport, easy for us to get to. Does everything we need.
Listen, Mark, we might conclude our webinar for today. Listen, thank you so much for coming to us from this facility in Launceston. It's great to see management in the high vis. For everybody watching, if you're watching this after we have concluded today's presentation, please continue to drop your questions into the chat, either via LinkedIn or on YouTube where we are streaming, and we'll actually email them through to Mark, and maybe we can address them in a later interview. Otherwise, I would like to say thank you for everybody watching. Subscribe to ABx Investor Hub, I believe. Hang on, let me just check that. You can actually subscribe directly to your website for direct updates, can't you, Mark?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Okay. So just go to the abxgroup.com.au and you'll be able to keep in touch with the latest information from ABx there. Mark, it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, and I look forward to our next chat.
Yep, me too, Shae. Thanks again.